of training camp is in the books, ladies and gentlemen. A lot has been happening in Philadelphia's camp. We've seen the offense struggling. We've seen the defense thriving. And usually that's the case in regards to training camp at this time of year. However, there are some other storylines that I think are important to start thinking about going forward, albeit very early, okay? Like I said, we know the defense has been playing really well, but I think there are some question marks still on this defense that I think, we are really going to have to find answers for quick, fast, and in a hurry, because it may lead to us struggling down the line in the regular season, okay? So, cornerback 2, can Kelee Ringo or Dory Jackson step up and play good ball there? Or even a guy like Eli Ricks, for example. Figuring out what to do at safety. Now that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is gone, and in camp, Makuba's hurt, Sidney Brown's not wowing anybody. Tristan McCullum's solid, but he's not a wow type player. You have a question mark at safety. And in my opinion, you got a question mark at edge, because the only guys that are stepping up and showing good ball are Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt. And are they going to be able to offset the losses of Josh Sweat and Milton Williams to be able to pick up the slack and pick up those snaps? And I question all that because Vic Fangio, I believe, is questioning all of that. And we're going to show you some of the quotes that Vic Fangio talks about some of these players, particularly Adoree Jackson and particularly guys at the edge room. And then also on the offensive side of the ball, we've seen Jalen Hurts, Kevin Patullo, and this offense struggle, particularly in the passing game. And that was one of the things that we thought would get a little bit better as not only the year went on, which it did to get us a Super Bowl, but in the offseason to say, hey, we're going to come and be a lot more well-rounded. And instead of being 29th ranked in passing, we might be closer to that 15-17 mark to get a little bit more balance with the running game that we have. And we all know the running game with Saquon Barkley, as we have seen in camp and as we've seen last year, it's still as good as it ever has been. And does that lead to a big problem for Philadelphia is going to be the question that we have in this episode. And again, it's going to be a little bit more longer-winded. I apologize, but I will timestamp for your convenience. And with that, let's get on with the show. But before I do that, I introduce the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I'm Asif Badi, your host, and like you, I am a Birds fan who talks about the Birds, only the Birds, and nothing but the Philadelphia Eagles. So please do us a favor here. Help us grow this channel organically and be part of the discussion by not only subscribing to the channel and liking this video, but commenting your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, if you're listening to us on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star review, because in the end, it doesn't cost you a damn thing. And I'm not asking for money on your end. I'm asking for a 5-star review and the like and subscribe. That doesn't take much effort, so it would be really, really appreciative of you to do that for me, and I'm putting a smile on this young man's face who doesn't feel very young, but that's neither here nor there. We thank you on the opposite side of the camera, on the opposite side of the airwaves. Okay, we're going to talk about a lot, okay? We're talking about defense, we're talking about the offense, we're talking about Jalen Hurts, we're talking about this, everything, okay? Let's first talk about the defense. Now, we have seen the defense play really, really well this training camp. And that's the reports coming out. And again, generally speaking, you will have the defense be ahead of the offense in training camp. It's a little bit easier to play reactionary ball and rely on instinct, as opposed on offense where you have to rely on timing, communication, process, all that stuff. But it's to the point where people are really questioning whether or not this offense can actually thrive without Saquon Barkley. The passing game has not looked good in camp, according to a lot of beat reporters and a lot of guys who are at camp right now. And Jalen Hurts has struggled. Drop passes, incomplete balls, overthrows, all that jazz. I say all that, though, while the defense is looking really, really promising in camp, I think personnel issues are kind of being overlooked by the fans. And I don't think Vic Fangio is overlooking the personnel issues that we have here. Because if you look at what we have questions at cornerback 2, we have questions at safety, and we have questions at edge. Those are 3 key positions on a defense. The safety is basically the guy, your last line of defense. And he's also a communicator for the guys on the back end, too. Cornerback 2, now that Quinyon Mitchell has moved to cornerback 1, and Cooper DeJean, I would assume, is not playing too much outside corner, but mainly playing slot corner and maybe even potentially safety. You have a vacant hole at cornerback 2, and you got to figure out whether or not it's easier to fulfill or fill the hole at cornerback 2 or safety. And then at the edge position, you got to be able to hold the edge, stop the run, play the pass, drop into coverage, right? And be able to rush the passer. So 3 key positions in a Vic Fangio defense that we still have question marks at. And we're going to talk about those positions down the line. And we're going to look at some of the quotes that Vic Fangio has in regards to some of those key positions, because I think what he's saying brings insight as to exactly what my concerns are for this team and whether or not this defense can pick up where it left off. Now, I am not here to suggest that this team's going to be the number 1 ranked defense like it was last season. That's an anomaly. Like, that was one of the greatest defensive performances all year that I have seen, probably since the Broncos won their Super Bowl with Von Miller and those boys. Like that, the Eagles defense last year was spectacular. We're not getting that again. However, I don't expect a drop-off from being number 1 to, being like 15th, for example. Like, I still expect to be top 10, top 12 minimum type defense, okay? However, those 3 key positions can really make or break a defense at times. And in the Vic Fangio scheme particularly, you got to be able to have all those pieces covered and be able to have guys who understand their assignment. Because on defense in particular, if you have one leak on defense, an offense is just going to keep attacking it until you decide to change things up. And when you change things up from what you've done all year, that's when you go into more problems, because now all of a sudden you're changing your identity. And that's not what you want on defense. You want everyone to be relatively sound. Now, there's going to be a hole. There's going to be a weakness in every defense, and you can account for that by understanding your assignment. But when you have to change things around all the time in order to offset weaknesses every single play, you become discombobulated, okay? And that's just me. That's just me speaking on a relatively minor level of competition experience, okay? In that sense, if anyone has better knowledge about that, then please feel free to let me know in the comments. But without further ado, I'm going to play Vic Fangio's comments, particularly about the cornerback position. So you got Kelee Ringo and Adoree Jackson fighting for CB2, and it's been an up and down camp for those guys. And I found it really interesting to hear what Vic Fangio was saying about Adoree Jackson, because in my opinion, I don't think he wants Adoree Jackson to be the starting cornerback. I think he wants to let Kelee Ringo take the reins there. I even think he would rather have Eli Ricks go in there and take more playing time at that position than rely on Adoree Jackson, okay? And you'll understand why I say that based on his comments below, or not his comments below, but on his audio. And with that, I'm going to play Vic Fangio's comments in regards to Adoree Jackson, and we'll let you guys decide what he means by what he's saying. So without further ado, on with the Vic Fangio comments.
His experience, how much does that show up on the field, and like what about his game shows that experience?
Just to give context, the reporter was asking, how does Adoree Jackson's experience play out on the field?
Yeah, the first few days out here, he was kind of like, he didn't know he was out there. The ball wasn't going his way at all. And then yesterday he had a couple balls thrown his way, and he did very well. He had a very good day yesterday. It's too early to say what his experience is or isn't right now. He's played a good bit of ball, but I think this is the place where he's got to, show who he is and be the player, hopefully, that people have always thought he could be.
What did he look like for the most part? What did he look like in film a year ago? And then he eventually gets benched, but did you chop that up more as a team wanting to look at younger players than anything he was doing?
No, I didn't watch a whole lot of tape on him. Howie kind of wanted to sign him, and when Howie wants to sign somebody, it doesn't matter what I say. So we just took him in, and I didn't really watch a lot of his tape last year, but I've seen him play over the years. Saw him when he was coming out of college. So
why do you think that this is the place that he can maybe show? You mentioned what he could be. Is it the scheme?
yeah, I don't know if I think it's the place. I think it's time for him to show that. He in Tennessee, when it came time to re-sign him, after his contract was up, they didn't. The Giants, his contract was up, they didn't. It's time to show who he is or who he isn't.
What's the little things?
Pretty interesting comments from Vic Fangio, in my opinion. I think when you hear him talk about, I didn't watch much film on him. That's Howie's guy. He wanted to bring him in, and so he's here. I think it just goes to show you that, hey, Vic Fangio doesn't necessarily think all that much about Adoree Jackson. He said he went to Tennessee. They didn't extend him. He went to New York. They didn't extend him. Well, what are we talking about here, right? That's how Vic Fangio thinks, in my opinion. I think that's how a lot of NFL guys think. So those comments in particular lead to me believing that he wants a guy like Kelee Ringo to at least go out there and prove that he could play or not play. And he wants to give the young guy a chance because he knows, hey, more likely than not, Adoree Jackson is going to come in here and just be like an okay player. At least with Kelee Ringo, we know he has physical capability of being an NFL quality player. He's got the physical gifts. He's raw, athletic, fast, big, right? Whether or not you put him at safety or corner is a whole nother discussion, but he's got physical tools. It's a matter of whether or not he can actually have that translate onto the field. And it hasn't necessarily done that on a consistent level. We've seen spurts of him, but I think what Vic Fangio thinks in his mind is like, hey, I have a raw prospect here. If we just give him the right tools and the right teaching and the right coaching, maybe we can hone in that physical capability and make him more aware on the field. So that way it leads to an excellent output. I tend to agree. However, when you hear his comments about Adoree Jackson, it's not necessarily a glowing endorsement for Adoree Jackson. And I think what we have to be really, really mindful of here is whether or not this position on the defense is going to be a problem. Because if Kelee Ringo doesn't necessarily figure out how to play this role at a competent level, I don't believe he's confident in Adoree Jackson. And do you really want to put Eli Ricks there at cornerback too? So then you say to yourself, maybe we put Cooper DeJean out there. Okay, what do we do at slot cornerback then? What do we do at nickel? What do we do at safety if Cooper DeJean has to be relegated to the outside? Do you trust Andrew Makubo? He's a smaller player. He's already hurt, and we haven't even started hitting in camp. So, do you see why I believe that there is concern here in regards to cornerback 2 and in regards to personnel? Will Kelee Ringo make that leap? That's the big question mark on the defensive side of the ball, at least on the back end anyway. If Kelee Ringo finds a way to put it together, and I do believe in his gifts because I did like him coming out of college. I liked him coming out of Georgia, and I was excited that Philadelphia was able to bring him in. But if he's able to put the physical gifts and the mental capacity it takes to play Vic Fangio's scheme, and he puts it together, you got a really, really quality defensive backroom with Kelee Ringo, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and then Reed Blankenship, who's solid. And then at that other safety spot, whether it's Makuba, whether it's Sidney Brown, at that point, you can mix and match what you do with Cooper DeJean, and you may be fine because you may be able to put him at safety and not necessarily play nickel all the time, but you can go into a more base style defense, whether it's 4-3, 3-4, bear, whatever it is that you want to do on the front 7. You at least have your back 4 taken care of. And then the loss of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson doesn't necessarily take as much of a blow. You know what I'm saying? So, again, it was interesting to hear what Vic Fangio was saying about Adoree Jackson and the defensive back room. Which now leads me to more concerns on the defense, and I'm talking about the edge room, okay? So guys like, Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari and Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt, right? I think, again, this is going to be a look at what Vic Fangio believes about these guys in the edge room, and it'll kind of wrap up or bring on a bigger conversation about personnel for the defensive side of the ball. So again, without further ado, I'm going to find the Vic Fangio comments in regards to the edge room, and we're just going to take a listen and see what he believes is going to be the status of, I should say, of this defensive end room. Okay. So without further ado, as I stumble through getting this all together, here's Vic Fangio in regards to the edge room.
Two when he needs to by bending his knees.
What's your evaluation of the edge rush depth so far with guys like Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari? How do you feel about the entire edge rush group in terms of depth?
So the reporter, again, a little tough to hear sometimes. The reporter basically asked him, what is your evaluation or what's the status you believe of Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari in the edge room? Okay. Keep in mind, that's who he was asking about. Okay.
Yeah, I feel good about Nolan, and Jalynx is making good strides. After that, we got some heavy competition going on, and nobody's really truly surfaced yet, good or bad. Hopefully over the course of this camp and preseason games, that will play itself out.
Okay. So, that was pretty funny. I don't know if you guys necessarily found humor in that. The man asked, what do you think about Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche? And Vic Fangio goes, yeah, I like Jalynx Hunt and Nolan Smith. I mean, listen, isn't that just exactly what you don't want to hear if you're an Eagle fan? He's basically telling you, hey, the only edge guys that we have that I think are good are Jalynx Hunt and Nolan Smith. Other than that, we have a bunch of guys. Now, again, I think that's what we all anticipated going into this offseason, and felt that, hey, those are the two guys that are going to pick up the starter snaps, and we kind of sprinkle in all the other guys here. It's just funny because we brought in Ojulari and Josh Uche to be able to help offset some of the snaps. And from what it seems like, Vic Fangio is not really interested in that because he's saying no one really stand out in regards to the edge room here. No one has really stepped up outside of Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt. And again, I don't know if this is a cause for concern in terms of we don't have a starting defensive end or a starting edge because Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt are anticipated to be penciled in as starters. However, I think it brings on a bigger discussion in regards to what this defense is going to look like now, because now you don't have as much depth at edge anymore because you lost Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, and everybody else down the line. Because remember, we had Brandon Graham, we had Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt as depth. Now all of a sudden, we lost Sweat, we lost Milton, we lost BG, and now you got to rely on the young bucks like Jalynx Hunt and Nolan Smith to be able to pick up the slack. And I don't know about you, Nolan Smith, I don't believe is going to be able to hold up for 16, 17 games in a regular season because we've seen him in limited snaps already have problems staying healthy. And he's a smaller guy. Now, he's an excellent player. It's not a matter of whether or not Nolan Smith can play. It's a matter of whether or not he could stay on the field. And we believe in Jalynx Hunt's ability and his versatility, and I believe that's what Vic Fangio loves most about him. However, is he going to be able to take on 500, 600, 700 snaps during the year? That's a question mark. And with Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari being into the fray here, it's not like they're playing excellent ball like Vic Fangio said. So what gives them the edge room? To me, I think what they're going to end up doing is a couple things. I think they're going to give Jihaad Campbell a lot of reps playing like outside linebacker, playing closer to the edge, and have Zach Bond move around a lot. And with Small London and Jeremiah Trotter and eventually Nakobe Dean coming back on the back end of the season, we have a lot of depth at linebacker all of a sudden. And I think because of that, what's going to probably end up happening is a guy like I said, Jihaad Campbell and Zach Bond, they may move them around and play closer to the edge when you have to give a spell to Jalynx Hunt and Nolan Smith. And then you put Jeremiah Trotter, Nakobe Dean, London out there as your Mike linebackers. And then all of a sudden you have a little bit of a different look because remember, last year, Zach Bond was initially brought in as an outside linebacker and they moved him inside. So he has the skill set to play out there. And Jihaad Campbell, the reason Philadelphia Eagle fans love him was not only because he's an excellent football player, but because of his versatility. You could put him on the edge. You could play him inside. You could have him drop back because he has the athletic ability to do so. And he has the ability to bull rush and get after the quarterback too. So those are three things that you need to be able to do in a Vic Fangio scheme, particularly on the edges, particularly outside linebacker. So again, the only edges right now that he trusts are Nolan Smith and Jalynx Hunt. Outside of that, nobody has stepped up to the fray. So could this lead to change in personnel? Possibly. And because of this change in personnel, like I said, we talked about it before. If you change something on the back end, if quarterback 2 is not solidified, it changes your whole back end. If you can't figure out what the edge room looks like with, Josh Uche, Azeez Ojulari, and all those guys, all of a sudden it changes what you have to do as a base package. So you're playing a lot. You're putting a lot of trust and a lot on Vic Fangio's plate, albeit deserved, to really figure out whether or not this defense is going to be chicken shit or chicken soup. Excuse my mouth. It's not the same personnel as last season because last year's roster was excellent top to bottom. You don't have that same depth this offseason. This roster, it's a completely different ball game. And while last year was more, hey, we line up in our packages and you have to find a way to get past our defense, this defense is going to be a lot more smokes and mirrors, I think, in my opinion. I think you're going to see a lot more personnel packages. I think you're going to see a lot more guys moving around, really trying to piece things together during the regular season. And it may not translate to us being ranked very highly during the regular season on defense. We're not going to go from number 1 to number 17, in my opinion, but I also don't think we're going to be a top 5 unit per se. We're playing a lot of really good quarterbacks, a lot of really good football teams. We are the Super Bowl champions, so the schedule is projected to be harder. I think what's going to end up happening is that we're going to really be figuring out packages during the first half of the year, and on the back end of the year, when we have a lot more of a sample size of who can play where and whatnot, you start honing in and you start playing complementary football. And then that's when you figure out, hey, we might have been 20th the first 8 weeks, but the last 8 weeks of the season, 9 weeks of the season, we started playing like a top 7, top 5, top, unit on defense. And then you may end up finishing in the top 10 or 12, but you're going into the playoffs playing like a top 10, top 5 type defense. And that's a scary proposition for anybody playing in the NFC, because I don't think there's really anybody in the NFC right now that makes us shake in our boots. The Rams are a good football team. They may have something to say. I think the Niners are going to have an easy schedule, so they are going to be rolling. You also have the Bucks, who I think are really, really good and finished their season on the back end on they may win like 7 or 8 straight games on the back end of their season. They may even host a playoff game. Who knows? But point being is personnel is going to be a problem on the defensive side of the ball, and we're really trusting Vic Fangio to figure out whether or not we have anything to work with here. And it doesn't seem necessarily like we thought in the past that Vic Fangio and Howie Roseman are working together in terms of constructing the defense. It seems to be Howie just puts guys there and lets Vic Fangio kind of figure out whether or not they're going to be able to play. We've seen it with Adoree Jackson. You see it with Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche, as they're just guys apparently, right? And we don't know what's Andrew Makuba is going to look like. We don't know what Sidney Brown's going to look like. We don't know McCullum. We don't know what Kelee Ringo is going to look like. And we don't have the veteran leadership back there on the back end anymore and some of the guys on defense. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this defense shapes up going into the new season. And again, now that we kind of talked about problems on the defensive side of the ball and some of the personnel issues, let's transition more to the other side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball. And this conversation is going to be more talking about Kevin Patullo and the offensive struggles that we've seen with Jalen Hurts, particularly passing the ball. Before I do that, though, let me get some tea in. I'll tell you, man. And tea might be a really sissy thing to go ahead and drink. I don't give a damn. This is good stuff. Whew. That feels good. Anyway, when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball, I think there's a lot of questions in regards to what this offense is going to look like for us with the new play caller in Kevin Patullo. Now, what they say in regards to this offense with Kevin Patullo is that you're going to have somebody who's running a similar system as to what Jalen Hurts has been familiar with for all these years. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. He knows what he likes, knows what he doesn't like, all that stuff. Okay? And as valuable as that is, I think it hasn't translated into camp. Now, whether or not you think that's a Jalen Hurts issue or a communicative issue, that's yet to be seen. But let's just get a little bit more insight from Kevin Patullo in regards to whether or not this offense is going to transition into a more pass-happy offense or if they're going to do more of the same. So with that, let's listen to this interview that has been done by NBC Sports Philadelphia, speaking with Kevin Patullo.
Last year, you guys ran with Saquon Barkley in the offensive line. That was something that you found. Obviously, you've got the great receivers. You throw Dallas Goedert in there. Could we see a little more of the passing game this year? Because those guys did kind of sacrifice a little bit last year, and they're blocking downfield.
I think it goes back to kind of the message I was sending earlier, was just whatever we have to do each week. If we have to throw it, we'll throw it. If we have to run it, we'll run it. I think the guys know that, and that's why we're practicing to just kind of do what we need to do to be successful, and it'll take from there.
Do you always have to keep in the back of your mind, though, like offensive linemen, they're always going to be asking to run the ball and push guys around. Receivers want to get the ball. Do you kind of have that in your mind? I got to give him something right here.
Well, when you've coached multiple positions, right? I've coached quarterbacks, receivers, all these different guys. You can feel that at times, but most of the good players understand the magnitude of the game. Like when the run game's rolling, receivers are usually good. When the pass game's going, the receivers in no line understand, like, hey, we're just protecting now. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. The guys feel the moment of when we need to do something and to step up. I mean, everybody kind of feeds off each other, right? If Saquon's doing well, that means play actions might pop up. Like, so you just kind of feed off each other and go from there.
Has it been any adjustment, like actually the mechanics of like, there's a lot of chaos here at camp, and then actually getting that play call in early enough for the quarterback? Has there been any adjustments like, wow, it is really quick?
Not really. I mean, when I was in New York, I called plays into fits. I relayed them in, and I had a hand-in-hand in some of the play calling. So it's not really much different for me. And kind of how the operations work over the last couple of years here, I was very involved. So the timing of things is not much different. So it feels very natural.
How do you train yourself for those moments where there's so much going on? You may have a player that's not in for a play because he's hurt.
And we'll get into more of that transition into being a play caller in just a moment. So again, it's not a matter of whether or not this offense is going to change. It's taking on the identity of the quarterback. And the identity of Jalen Hurts and this offense and what Sirianni has been preaching the past few years, just doing what it takes to win. Keeping the main thing, all that cliche talk that we hear in regards to Philadelphia. It's ball control, run the clock, take care of the football, right? All that stuff. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, if we're going to have to throw it, we throw it. If we run it, all that stuff, right? That's fair. We like to hear that. And I'm not necessarily looking for this team to be this high-powered, guns blazing type of offense, although we have the personnel for it. However, I am curious to see what this offense will look like if we sprinkled in a little bit more passing. And in camp, we have seen Jalen Hurts struggle when he's been asked to throw the football a little bit more. Now, again, I don't put too much stock in camp per se in terms of the results of camp. I think what Philadelphia looks at, and I think what fans need to start looking at more, is just exactly how these guys play in camp. Don't look at the fact whether or not this guy scores a touchdown or this guy catches the football or this guy gets the sack. Not necessarily the case. It's more about, are you in the right spot when you need to be in the right spot? Are you making the right read? Are you running the correct route? Are you finding the right hole in the zone? Are you being in the right position as a defender in the zone that you're assigned to? Are you able to adjust? It's those things that I think coaches are looking at more so than the results of a play, because you can be in the wrong spot and make a spectacular one-handed grab, but that doesn't necessarily mean you ran the right route or that the quarterback made the right read. It just means you made a spectacular play. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And in game, the results are all that matters. But Philadelphia consistently has been talking about process and how they actually go about getting those results on a consistent basis. Because if you have done anything in your life, which I'm sure everybody on the opposite side of this camera and the opposite side of the airwaves have, when you do anything in life, it's not necessarily about the results. The results that you covet are from the process of building up to that result. Do you get what I'm saying? I might have said that in a very poor fashion, but your process, the way you go about your business, yields to the results that you want. Part of pursuing the dream is actually pursuing the dream, right? A Max Kellerman bar from a few years ago, right? What makes the dream special is the pursuit of the dream. What makes the results special is the work that you put in prior to yield those results. And Philadelphia, I think, is working on not necessarily achieving the optimal result, but achieving optimal process in order to get the best result possible. Because at that point, you rely on the talent of A.J. Brown, of Smith, of Goddard, of Barkley, of Hurts, of this offensive line. That's what you do. But what you need to make sure they all do on a consistent basis is be on time, be in the right position, understand the play call, get the play calling incorrectly, making sure the quarterback makes the right reads. If you're not doing those things, you're never going to get the results that you want. And the question that I would have going forward in camp, now again, it's only the first week of training camp here, is Jalen Hurts right now optimizing his process? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But right now, the results are showing he's not necessarily making 100% the right reads. He's not necessarily operating the offense to its proficient level that it can be. Maybe Kevin Patullo is not getting the play calls in right. Maybe they're not understanding situations. Whatever the case may be, it's yielding to the offense struggling. And the thing that we have to rely on that's consistent and that's always been there, and just this past camp, we are seeing this run game be elite. And we saw Saquon Barkley was a star in the recent practice that they just had. and the offensive passing game tend to struggle. Now, do I believe that's a bad sign for Philadelphia? Not particularly. I also don't think it's nothing. I also think that, hey, when you're Super Bowl MVP and you're the quarterback that everyone believes that you are, and you have the resume of a top 5 guy, you shouldn't struggle necessarily when the onus is put on you to throw the ball more. Now, I know we've seen all the records of him when he's throwing it 30 plus times a game that we've only lost like 9 games when he does that and all that jazz, right? So I'm not saying he's not capable of winning the football game when you ask him to throw the ball more. What we are looking for, though, or at least what I'm looking for, is just a little bit more of a smoother process and a little bit more efficiency on that front. If we have to throw the ball a little bit more, can he get the job done? Now, I believe he can. I just want to see it more on a consistent basis. And I don't think having a play caller that's different every single year necessarily helps with that process. But you know what? That's the cards that you're dealt with. So anybody who sits there and says, like, hey, Jalen Hurts is struggling, it's a little bit of a problem, you can't totally dismiss them, especially considering last offseason where he was as sharp as anybody in camp. He was on the ball with everything. Balls weren't hitting the ground. He was making the right reads. He looked sharp in his delivery, all that stuff. This offseason camp is a little bit different, right? So, again, I'm curious to see what this offense is going to look like with Kevin Patullo and Jalen Hurts. Are they going to lean more on their passing game, the thing that's been struggling in camp, or are they going to really rely on Saquon Barkley, and are we really going to put that much more of a load on Saquon Barkley going forward to try to repeat what we did last season? What made it special last season was not only the stellar play of Saquon Barkley, but the fact that it was coupled with the most suffocating defense that I think Philadelphia has had probably in its history. And do I necessarily believe that this defense is going to be as suffocating as it was last season? No. I also don't believe the running game is going to be 2,500 yards like it was last season. Do I believe Saquon Barkley is going to get 1,500 yards this season? Yes, if he's healthy, knock on wood, he stays healthy, I believe he can do it. This offensive line is as good as anybody, and he doesn't get hit until he gets to the second level. And usually that's the time where he hits his head on the goalpost, right? So this Philadelphia Eagles team is going to be very reliant, in my opinion, on this offense, particularly the passing game, being a little bit more efficient when it's called upon. Now, I know Jalen Hurts is not a quarterback that necessarily is a rhythm type player because of the way he plays, because he's a running quarterback, because he, is very stoic in his approach. It's going to look ugly at times, and I don't care about it looking pretty. I just want it to be effective. And will the passing game be as effective as it was last season? I hope it's a little bit more effective, is my point. And last season, it was effective when it was called upon. It was just a matter of whether or not we threw the ball. This offseason, I think we are going to throw the ball more. Will it translate to that efficiency being the same or better? That's the biggest question mark, in my opinion. And I think, that comes down to play calling, that comes down to communication, that comes down to all these little types of things. And we're going to talk about one more thing in regards to Kevin Patullo and this offense. Let's listen to what he says in regards to the transition it takes from being a play caller versus being like a pass game coordinator. Okay, so with that, let's pull up the clip, and then we'll kind of finish the episode on our final thoughts in regards to Kevin Patullo.
You train yourself for those moments where there's so much going on. You may have a player that's not in for a play because he's hurt. In those moments, just thinking so quickly, having plays ready, and then actually the mechanics of getting it in. Like, how do you train for that at practice? Do you do it in front of a mirror?
I think really, like you said, it is at practice, right? And so even like today, we were walking through stuff yesterday, 4 plays for today. And when you kind of get out in the field and you're like, hey, is such and such in? Is Dallas in? No, he's not. Okay, I'm moving on to this play. So you just kind of work with it, and you need to know the identity of the play, right? As the play caller, you know what you're looking for out of that play. So there's a key main person or thing that you're looking for. And so that's why you got to just pay attention and kind of watch it go and get the plan.
And so this is kind of similar to what you've done, but for Nick and Kellen and Shane, have you kind of been during games like a big picture guy of the game, or like remind them of something? Who's going to be that guy for you now? Because you're, play to play. Sometimes you're in deep with it. Is there like a big picture guy, or somebody just kind of come tap you on the shoulder sometime?
Well, I mean, right now when you look at our staff, we've been together for the most part. We've added 2 new coaches as far as Scott Leffler and Parks Frazier and Montgomery Van Gorder, right? Those are kind of the big 3, and Greg Austin on offense with the O-line. And I think the bulk of the staff, because we've been together, the communication's been really good, right? We know kind of how the operation works, the flow of how things work. Parks and I have worked together in Indianapolis, so we have very familiar relationship as far as play calling as well. So I think as far as doing things on a normal basis, I think we're all really in sync right now, and then we just got to continue to do it throughout the year and see where it goes.
The point there, though, the key thing on this offense is just understanding what you have, understanding your personnel, understanding what the magnitude of the play means. That's what a play caller is. It's understanding the ebbs and flows of games. It's not, oh, this is the right play to call right here. No, it's understanding like, hey, the running game's working right now. Let's ride the running game a little bit. And if the offense, and again, this has always been my barometer for a play caller and whether or not I believe they are elite or next level type play caller, okay? I think anybody can call a game. Okay. Like if you have a script, you could say, okay, these are our 25 best plays. This is what I believe will work on this drive. I think most people in the NFL can do that. What makes an excellent play caller, though, is knowing the ebbs and flow of a game. Last season, while it didn't necessarily look effective at times, Kellen Moore, I felt, understood the flow of the game. And because of that, he was play calling effectively. The year with Brian Johnson, I know we look at the results and we say he finished 8th in offense. Why did we get rid of him? It's because there was no flow in the offense. The play calling did not make sense. One play didn't build on another. That's what it looked like. It yielded great results because you have talented players on the offensive side of the ball, and we haven't been ranked below 8th in the Nick Sirianni era. Like, we've always been an effective offense, okay? But when was this offense its optimal? When you had a play caller like Shane Steichen, who I feel is probably the 2nd or 3rd best play caller in the National Football League, because he understands when the offense is stagnant, what to do to get the wheels churning again. And that's my biggest knock on play callers like Kyle Shanahan, like Matt LaFleur, like Kevin O'Connell. Like those guys, excellent play callers, brilliant offensive minds, no doubt about it. But what they lack is when their script is not falling into place, can they offset it? They can't. I feel personally there's only a few play callers who can do that. I think Andy Reid can do that. I think Sean McVay can do that. I think Shane Steichen can do that. At times, I think Jim Harbaugh can do that. But even again, we have to wait and see because, we haven't seen the results for the Chargers yet. Point being is, last season, Kellen Moore showed he has the capability of doing that. Can Kevin Patullo do the same thing? That's my biggest question mark. I don't doubt his credentials. I think he's more than qualified. We've talked about it in episodes past. He's had a great track record of being able to add something to an offense and it leading to good results. However, again, while it's really early in camp and we're seeing the offense struggle, and again, it's not necessarily about whether or not they're playing good or not. What we need to see for this Philadelphia Eagles team, I believe, to have their best shot at repeating as Super Bowl champions is not only continuing with the running game and being able to balance that with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and all that, but it's to also be able to dictate the flow of a game and be able to find ways to get the offense churning again when you get stagnant. If you're able to do that, if Kevin Patullo comes in and is able to do that, you're going to have an effective offense. 100%. And it may not necessarily yield into the best yardage output, but it's going to lead into a comprehensive, flowing offense that helps out the rest of the team. That's why last season I didn't necessarily care that we were ranked 29th in passing offense. It's because the running game was so effective, you rely on the running game. When that's flowing, you let that dictate it. And when we did have to throw the ball, Jalen Hurts was effective enough. And again, that I believe is the identity of this offense. It's not going to look pretty. It's going to look choppy, but it has to make sense. And in that way, I know I just said it's going to look choppy, but there's a flow to the offense relatively. Every play builds on one another. Every play leads to something. There's a reason for the play call. That's what play calling in the NFL is, in my opinion. Being a special play caller is knowing the reason for your play call. It's not just going out there and running your script. Because if I had to pick an offense just to run their script, there's no better offense than Kyle Shanahan when it's on script. Just isn't. There's no way to stop it. When it's on time, on rhythm, in script, it's always churning. But why has Kyle Shanahan not won the big one? It's when things go off script. It's when things are not cookie cutter. And you as a play caller have to be able to offset that. Now, what makes Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, a top 5 guy is he doesn't need to be in rhythm as a passer to be effective, right? If you get him in a choppy situation, he doesn't look at it as, I'm in panic mode here. No, because he genuinely, you ask him this question, he genuinely will tell you he does not believe in momentum. It's this figment of our imagination. And in reality, when it comes to each individual play, unless you're running a hurry-up offense, in my opinion, he's right. What result does one play yield to another? It's not the result of the play. It's the setup. It's the process of the play that leads to the result that you want. If you're running a hurry-up offense and you're getting to the line of scrimmage quickly, and you're getting this defense on their toes, letting them, and you complete a short pass, for example. You get to the line and you're tiring out the defense ends up lining up in a position where they're going to go anyway. And that's what makes the hurry-up offense so effective. In the run game, if you're just running the ball for the sake of running the ball, you're never going to be an effective offense. That's why with Brian Johnson, when we had him, it wasn't an effective offense. Because he would just run the ball sometimes. For 3 straight plays, he'd be a first down, and then all of a sudden, he would throw it 3-4 times. And you're like, what the hell are you doing? There was no rhythm, no flow, made no sense to the offense. Kellen Moore, there was a rhythm and flow to the offense. Whether or not it looked pretty doesn't matter. There was a flow to the offense. Can Kevin Patullo bring the flow to the offense here? And in camp, again, I don't care about the result. I care about the process. Is he getting the play calling in right? Is he throwing the right ball? Is he throwing it to the right person? Is the receiver running the right route? Are they playing in the right system? Are they playing the right scheme? That's what matters to me. So again, it's really early in camp in regards to the offensive struggles. So I'm not going to look too deep into whether or not this offense is struggling. We are a run-based offense that builds our passing offense with the RPO. It's tough to simulate that in camp. I'd rather do that in game, and I'd rather see that play out because we saw it play out in the NFC title game and in the Super Bowl last season. When the RPO is being used, like I said, there's no the ceiling for Jalen Hurts when running the RPO is as high as anybody in the NFL. And when we rely on that as the base of our offense, this offense is unstoppable. But eventually the athleticism for Jalen Hurts will drop down, which is why I believe they're going to focus on traditional drop back passing offenses in training camp, but they're going to be relegated to actually relying on the RPO at some point. And when they do that, you're going to see an output that's exceptional. So we'll see what this offense will yield going forward. I'm excited for this team, but again, my main concern is mainly on defense and whether or not we have the personnel to fill what Vic Fangio wants to do. And on the offensive side of the ball, listen, it's 1 week. Let's see how it looks in a few weeks now. By the time September 4th rolls around, if we got more problems, then we got a problem. But for right now, no issues for me. Just like it shouldn't be any issues for you.
Hey, thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want to continue to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Riding the Bench Eagles Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time here at the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast.